This is Monday afternoon, July the 28th, and I'm visiting with Rose Guinnip at her home at 510 South 6th Street in Marshall. She's been a long-time resident of Marshall, and I think we're going to learn some things about her and about Marshall in this interview. So Rose, I'll kind of start with you. What would you like to tell about your background, maybe your family, your siblings?
Well, I was born Rose Guinnip with an Irish Catholic father who was very strict. I was the fourth of 5 children. Is that too loud? And we had great times. We lived north of Marshall on a farm. My father was a rural mail carrier. We children went to, in our early education years, to a one-room country school with all 8 grades under one roof. A sassafras school that was north of town. And as kids, we mowed the yard for the Forsyth farm, which was Norman Forsyth and Mrs. Forsyth. And they were lovely people, and as we would mow, we kids would take turns, and Mrs. Forsyth would come out and serve us lemonade on the sink in the front porch, which is still there. And we had a great young life. It was nothing fancy. We didn't have all these modern toys, and we didn't have all the gadgets and stuff. But we kids made our own fun. We played in the mud and threw mud balls, and we went to Blizzard Ford, and we swam in the creek, and it was country living, and it was very nice. We had neighbors, and we kids would get a ball game up in the yard out to the front of the house, and once in a while, one time I put a ball through the window and got in a lot of trouble at home. But we had such good times, and there wasn't all the serious problems there is now. There wasn't crime. We never heard the word crime when we was growing up. We never heard drugs. And of course, in our house, we never heard the word sex, because that was not a word that children was exposed to back in those days. But I had a wonderful young life, and I grew up. I was considered a tomboy. I had a sister who was considered a lady. She liked to have her hair done, and she liked to have neat clothes. Well, I got her hand-me-down clothes, and I played out in the yard, and I was always happy. I could find something to like, and I still try to do that. I can get awfully upset even at a bridge table, but then I can think, well, there's something good on the next hand. So,
Rose, today every child seems like has a cell phone or an iPad or something. What did you do for entertainment and fun at school?
oh, we played out in the yard, and of course, I tell you, our schools wasn't like they are now. We didn't have a lot of spare time. We walked to school. There wasn't school buses. We walked to school. There was not inside bathrooms. We went outside to the outside Johns, and we went into class, and of course, it was 8 classes in the same room, and the teacher would direct you to the back and the one she was working with to the front. And we never had dull time. I don't know how to explain it, but we were always busy doing something, moving about or preparing something, or she'd have us to do little chores, and sometimes for her even.
Mabel Arford.
Yes, Mabel Arford. She lived west of town years and years and years. And she was what relation to Helen Friedenberger? They were relation. And Helen Friedenberger later was a teacher also. But I had wonderful teachers, and we were taught to respect our teachers, whether they was right or wrong. My parents would never, until we got old, and they'll say, well, we knew that one right, but there was no way. We was going to tell you, anyhow, I really had, I think, the best years this world had, because I went from the transaction of practically horse and buggy up to the jet set. And I have been lucky enough, and I think a lot of it was because my father was a mail carrier, and I got exposed to town earlier than a lot of country kids, because when I got to be in the 5th grade, and I was the only child in my class, and the teacher didn't want to prepare for one person. My dad said, okay, don't do it. I'll take her to town with me, and she can ride in with me, because the post office is a block north of what Old North School was, and she can go to North School. So I started in the 5th grade riding to town with my dad and started to town school. Oh, I thought I died and went to heaven. I met friends my age, and then Mr. Arney was here, and I loved music but hadn't really been exposed to it a lot. And he got me interested in music, and I talked my dad, with Von Arney's help, into buying me a trumpet. And I played, well, later I got a cornet, but I got a trumpet and a cornet, and I played even after I was having children. I played in the city band to be able to have musical fun, because I love music. And then I went to Terre Haute, and what was the teacher over there? I took dancing lessons. My mother thought I should, because one of her friends' kids did.
Would that have been Ernestine Myers?
Ernestine Myers is who it was, yes. And I went to Ernestine Myers, and I took dancing lessons, and I got pretty good, too. And I was thin back then, and I could kick up high and dance these dances she taught us. And so they asked me to dance at the county fair, and I will never forget it as long as I will live. And I got out there and was doing that. My dad walked across there, got a hold of my arm, and marched me off of there. I was not going to show my bare rear end, because I had a short skirt on, to the public in Clark County. I was horrified. And I said, that's the end of me ever doing anything that is talent in public anymore. So I went to the band, and I had long band costumes, and I could do that.
You're not going to do then a soft shoe routine or a dance step for us now?
Well, I don't think I'll do that today. That my arthritis has got into my active bones.
You kind of indicated earlier there that there were some kind of strict dating requirements that you had in your family home.
We had some pretty strict dating. My father was a very serious, dedicated Irish Catholic man, and he thought we should date no one but Catholic men. Well, in my class, there was one Catholic man, and it was Donald Mealing, who became a priest. And he was my best friend, and he was like a twin to me. Our mothers were friends, and they grew up in Edgar County, and they married Clark County boys at the end of World War I. So when they go to, they had parties, 4th of July and New Year's Eve parties. And when they would go to their parties, they would take us, that was for the day you had babysitters, and they would put us in on the bed, and the parents would take turns checking on us to see that we hadn't strangled with a blanket or fallen off on the floor and broke our heads or something. But anyhow, Father Don and I grew up like Siamese twins. So, and we're always, to his dying day, very good friends. But the most embarrassing thing that he ever did to me, and he thought it was a hoot, he got up at a class reunion, and it was probably our 50th or so, and he said, class, there's something I've been wanting to tell you all these years, and I'm just going to tell you today. And everybody sat there stone quiet, like, Don, what in the world did you do? You're a priest. And he said, I used to sleep with Rose when we were young. You could have heard a pin drop in that whole colonial kitchen. It was out of the colonial kitchen. It was like, oh, my Lord. You know, everybody said, I can't believe this. And he just pulled back his chair and sat down. So I sat there. Thank God my mind clicked in. I stood up and I said, oh, he did. We were 6 weeks old. Our mothers were friends. We slept together for years. They went to parties, and they put us in the same bed because they didn't want to watch us, so they'd take turns watching us, with the whole room just went up and laughed, you know. But I did have a fun life, and it's still good, but I'm old now. I can't do all these crazy things.
When you were growing up, Rose, did you have chores in your family? Have certain things that you had to do in the house?
I didn't do housework. I was the tomboy. But I did outside work. I worked, my dad was at the post office, but we had a dairy farm. We had cattle. So I worked at the farm, and I fed chickens, and I gathered eggs, and I went out to the barn and fed the cows. Later on, when I went to high school, well, in fact, I got a driver's license. I drove before I was old enough to have a driver's license. Fenton Fraker was a state policeman, and he come to our house and sat down at the kitchen table, and he said to my mother, "Get me a piece of paper." And he wrote on a piece of stationery, "Rose has my permission to drive," and signed it. Patrolman Fish, I should have saved it. It would be a historical piece, and signed it Fenton Fraker. And I carried that from the time I was 13 until I was 16 and got a driver's license so I could legally drive. But I drove a pickup truck and delivered milk, and I delivered it to some stores. We bottled milk and we had canned milk. And I delivered the bottles to the stores and delivered the canned milk to some restaurants, and then took the rest of it out to the cheese plant we had, that had been. I didn't think I was overworked. I had a ball, and then I had the truck. I was the only one that drove, and I was a freshman in high school, and I took that truck to high school, and I'd back it up there, back in that parking lot at the back where you parked all the time. And then there was no cafeteria back in those days, so we went to the candy kitchen, and Martha and Emer Hall had the candy kitchen, and we went down there to eat our lunch. So I would go out to get in my truck. That truck would have as many people standing in the back of it to get a ride from the high school down to the candy kitchen to jump out and to eat lunch, and then they'd get back in, we'd go back to school. So one day I was going up the street, and here comes this police car out, and Fenton Fraker was there, and he come across there, and I said, "Oh, what have I done?" Because I was in it by myself then. I'd let the kids out, and he said, "Rose, I know what you're doing, and I'm not going to arrest you." And he said, "If you really want me to die, I won't even tell your dad," because my dad was stricter than the police. And he said, "But I wish if you want to take those kids down, would you make them sit down? One of them's going to fall out of that car. I saw one of them the other day and break their neck." So when I got in the next day, I said, "Anybody who wants to ride has to sit down." So they sat down all around the edge. You know, but I had good times as a young person, and
That was kind of before some of the, quote, safety standards that we have.
oh my, yes, we never had seat belts, and we never had any of this stuff. But I was a good driver because I started young, and I knew I had to be careful because I was working with my truck from the farm, and if I had a problem, it'd have been serious. But I was a very lucky young woman, and I'm glad I grew up in the days I did.
To pursue that thing of dating, you must have met another young man somewhere along the way, and I think he had kind of an unusual nickname, and I never did understand or hear how he got that name.
Well, I did meet a wonderful man and married him. He was the father of my 5 children, and he was also my next door neighbor. But he had a nickname that he picked up when he was a freshman in high school. And country kids, when they went to high school, they were all laughed at because we were country kids, and the high school kids thought we were really dummies. So, but he went to high school, and he took his lunch. It was before the day of cafeterias, and his mother had put a fresh peach in his lunch that day for his fruit. And when he got out, he was eating, of course, out in the parking lot, and with his car door open, sitting there eating his lunch. And some of these town kids, which later become very good friends, thought that, "Isn't this funny? Some old country kids coming to town eating out here in his car." Well, they was going home and eating at home. And one of them grabbed a peach, and they smeared it on the back of his jacket. And I'll tell you the 2 people that were involved, which later became lifetime friends as long as they lived, Porty Dar and Pee Wee Hoggett, and they were from out by Auburn. And they were the ones who did this. And they smeared this peach on Peach's good jacket that he wore to school. And then he went to class, and his first class was Mr. Holler's class in history in high school. And when he walked in, here was this on the back of his jacket, and Mr. Holler said, "Bobby, come up here." And of course, if you didn't know Mr. Holler, if you knew Mr. Holler, he said, "Turn around and let Mr. Holler see what's on the back of you." And here was this peach smeared all the way down his jacket. And he turned around, he said, "What is that?" He said, "Oh, that's a peach. I should have taken my jacket off, but it was cold out there." And he said, "What? How'd you get that there?" And he said, "Oh, those kids from Auburn." Of course, they always clung together, and they was always in trouble. And he said, "They smeared that on my jacket, and my mom's really going to be mad." And Mr. Holler said, "Oh, I think it'll be all right." She said, "Would you like for me to call your mom?" He said, "I think we should call him Peaches today. That would make a nice name for the." And that started in a class in Mr. Holler's room. And the kids come out of there, got in the hallway and laughed, "Hey, Peaches!" And it just, that was where he got his name. And
I had never heard that
well,
story. I
that's
was
the
just
true,
curious.
factual story of where he got it from a real peach.
Well, I knew we had learned some history about things today. Now,
Yeah.
you indicated you kind of had a little interest in music, and that was perhaps a hobby or an interest of yours. Did you have some other hobbies that have continued on, maybe even hobbies today?
Oh, I have all kinds of hobbies, but music was my main one. And I got lucky enough, I got to go to Martinsville and take piano lessons from a lady in Martinsville. And I got Mr. Arney interested in me because if he'd call and want me to do something, I'd do it. So I was his gopher in the music department when he'd come along.
Tell them about playing a lot of the funerals.
Oh, yes, I always got out of school to play taps at the military funerals. And I was not even in high school yet. And Mr. Arney said, "I think you should do this," because a lot of it seemed like at that time there was a lot of Catholic cemetery. And he said, if it's all right with your parents to let you get out of the class at school to do that. And I said, "Oh, well, I'm sure, but you better talk to him." So I got out of school. Oh, I was thrilled to death. I got to go to all the funerals and play taps at St. Marshall and Catholic cemeteries. I'd go over the hill. And then I had an answer over the hill, Franklin Elsoff. And he played the cornet and trumpet. We both played cornets and trumpets, and we're good friends all of our lives. And but he'd play over the hill, or I'd play over the hill, and the other one would play up on the high. And we'd be the echo and the trumpet player. But
I guess I did not realize that you had played in the city band.
Oh, yeah, I
played in that
did.
for 35 years straight and retired that last year.
Well,
But
I was
how
younger
long
than
did
you.
How long did you play?
Well, I played it in high school, and then after I played in it, and I had some kids, but then I don't know exactly what year I gave up, but in the 50s.
Early 50s.
Yeah, because Donald was born in 51, and Sally was born in 53, and Susan was born in 55, and by 55 I was out of it, whatever. I could remember going up those steps pregnant, so I went at least before he was born, but I'm not sure. Maybe I think I went maybe before Sally was born. I think I went when you was a baby.
Have
You
you ever?
also sang in the American Legion Choir.
Oh, yes, I did that, too. And then that didn't work because we went to Springfield and we went to, anyhow, I had to get a sitter to keep the kids on the farm, and it was overnight stays and things, and it didn't work out with my
Have you ever
family.
picked up the cornet or trumpet in recent years?
Oh, I got one here someplace, or maybe it's out your house, Donald. I still have con. Oh, I had a good one, yes, and I can still play. One day I was messing around upstairs for recent, I mean, not right now, but 10 years ago. And it was in there in the attic, right through that bathroom upstairs. And then it was in there, and I went in there, and I thought, "Oh, man, I can still play this." I'd hate to have to play it in public, but I still knew the notes on it and how to get them.
And that's the fun thing about music. It's
You
something
don't
can use all
forget
your
it,
life.
yeah. And I played the piano, but all I played was chopsticks, or I could play Christmas carols, because I would play them I'd play the melody with my right hand and chord with the left hand to get the right, and I could do that and get that. I could get along fairly well, but I never pursued any of, like my sister who became a musician. But
What year were you married, and where was that?
I was
Special
married
wedding?
in 1950 at the Catholic Church here in Marshall. And,
Father Donahue,
yes, Father Donahue married me.
all the Currens,
And, yeah,
baptized all of us.
yeah. And, but the flip side, which you don't want to record because it was awfully embarrassing, but my husband had an aunt who disliked Catholics. And she was not raised in Marshall, but she had been taught that Catholics were weird. And so we had this church wedding, which was considered a big wedding back in those days if you went to the church and had a wedding. And she wanted to come to the wedding. The Legion was brand new. It was in 1950. And the Legion was brand new. Now, in the Legion, they gambled, they sold alcohol and everything. But when Aunt Rose came, she would not come into the Catholic Church. At our wedding service, her family came in, and Uncle John sat on the second row. But she sat in the car at the north side of our church, would not set foot in a Catholic church. But we went 2 blocks or 3 over to the Legion home for the big hoopla, having a big dinner and a band and all this reception. She was the first one out of that car into the Legion. And I laughed over that for 50 years. I said, anyone who wouldn't set foot in a church, who would run into where they gambled, drank, and learned everything happened down the Legion. But these were the good old days. And,
Did you ever live away from Marshall, or has this always
not
been
permanently. No, I've had a place in Tennessee and I've had a place in Florida, but it was just seasonal. And no, I've always been a permanent resident. And for most of my life, my permanent address was Rural Route 3, Marshall, because I married and I was on the east side of Route 1, and I married Peaches, and he was on the west side of Route 1, but it was still Rural Route 3. And I had the same Rural Route 3 address. I'd meet people, and they'd say, well, that was
Her
your...
dad was our mail carrier
Yeah.
when we grew up.
But, I'd say, my address is Rural Route 3, and I'd meet people I knew when I was younger, and they say, no, that was when you was young. And I said, that is still my address. And it was, till I moved to town, And,
Is that something that ever kind of bothered you, that we lost the rural routes and now come down to
Oh.
these crazy big numbers
No,
and zip codes and all of that?
that's one thing I'm very blessed for. I roll with the changes of time, and I try very hard. Some of my kids and grandkids have done things that I just have a hard time swallowing, but I think, okay, I'm sure my folks had a hard time swallowing things I did, and my grandmother lived with us for 14 years when I was growing up, and I'm telling you how she put up with all of us. I don't know, when you look back and think about it, but I try to be broad-minded, and you can ask Donald, I don't cause too many ruffles in the family, do I, Don? No, I don't, and I'm not going to. I figure if they have a problem and want me to help work it out, I will, but if they don't want me involved, I won't be. And I have some good daughter-in-laws, and I'm very fortunate for that, because I stay out of their business and they tolerate me. If I really want something for my son and say, I want this and that, they don't say, well, he's not going to do that. I've got him doing something else. But basically, I do have 3 nice daughter-in-laws.
You're very, very
And
blessed.
I'm very blessed. And my son-in-laws went by the wayside somewhere, but they still like me. So
Is there a particular person or maybe event in the world that you say really influenced my life?
yes, Helen Moore. Helen Moore took me under her wing when I was a young teenager. And she got me into the right things, doing the right thing, and with the right people. And she always knew, and if I did something wrong, man, she'd hear it and she'd be right down my back. But Helen Moore was the best influence in my life, in fun and serious things. That she would be my most...
Did her wonderful talent of music help inspire you in that?
Oh, it might have. I mean, she didn't set me down and make me work at anything, but I always admired her, yeah. That she could just do anything and do a wonderful, gracious job of it. And, yeah, she was one of my favorite people that I think of all my life.
Are there any world events or historical events that have taken place in your lifetime that you say, wow, that really stands out as something unusual, special, or helped, even maybe influenced me?
Oh.
Did you say you listened to the Pearl Harbor announcement on the radio?
Oh, well, yeah, back when World War broke out with Pearl Harbor. Yes. We was living north of town, and it was on a radio, and we all laid down on the floor and listened. It was so scary, because, this was like they was going to come bomb us. We thought, but and my parents were very concerned. That's why we all got concerned, yeah. But that was the biggest jolt that I could remember being young, that really affected me that I can think of.
Well, you remember the days then of the blackouts then too.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
I remember those.
Oh, yeah. And, I don't know, of course, I remember the day before the car washes, and we washed our car at Blizzard Ford. We didn't,
You were blacked out already because they didn't have electricity out there.
oh, yeah, we didn't get electricity till the Belsicle came in, and they ran it up Route 1. Well, they ran from Paris, Edgar County Electric came down Route 1. And that's when we got to hook on electricity. We lived with coil lights.
How did that change life in the house?
Oh, we thought we'd died and gone to heaven. My, but we had coil lamps, and we sat around the fireplace. It was a wood fireplace, you know, and had good old country living when I was young. But then in the 40s, when the Busicle came in, and they run electricity down Route 1 from north to there, we got it at our house. They ran it back our lane.
So when you married Dad, Guinnip did not have electricity.
Yeah, we didn't
You had to
have
go back to the
we didn't have
oil
electricity
lamp.
when I first got married and moved off of Route 1.
I had uncles and aunts that lived in the country, and I never could figure it out. They had refrigerators, but they were kerosene.
Oh, we had that. What
And
did we
one
get
had a
later?
gas refrigerator, and I just never could figure out how could
They had
that
a
heat.
Delco generator.
Generator. Yeah, we got a generator that we got our refrigeration put on at some point. And then we had a dairy, and we had to have refrigeration for, we did milk door to door and restaurant to restaurant and things, you know, from forever. We did stuff in town.
Did you have a milking machine?
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, we got Surge milking machine, and boy, was we glad, because we used to have to milk them this way. And I can remember when we got the Surge milkers, we thought, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, yeah.
Well, all these changes in the electricity and the modern conveniences we have today, what of those conveniences would you say kind of changed your life the most?
Well, everything's just so easy. You have time on your hands, and you have to figure out when you had all these old-fashioned things to do, you never had spare time of sitting down thinking, what am I going to do?
Washing machine.
Yeah, washer and dryers. I had could remember hanging clothes, even on farm with kids. I didn't have automatic washer and dryers for a long time, and I'd hang diapers out and they'd freeze dry and but my biggest gift was washer and dryer, because I had a family, and when that come along and I got rid of the ones that you run through the ringer and hung out on the line and froze dry and had to bring in the basement and finish drying, and oh yeah, but you know, I watch the kids now, and I honestly think, from watching just even their facial expressions, I think we were happier than they are. They have too much, they know too much, they can do anything they want to do. They're given too much money without earning it, knowing what it really means. And I think it's bad, but at this stage I'm just gonna weather it out, and Dawn will have to put up with me. But
What about television? How's that influenced you? Do you like it?
I don't watch TV like. I watch news and sports. I have friends that you say TV, they know every, what is the series that comes on, like
Soap operas?
soap operas, it's on, everything that's in these stories, it's on day and day. Well, I'm not in here days at a time. There's no way I'm going to watch that stuff. But I do watch TV, and I have it on. It probably is on now, but I have it on to not have a dead silent house. But then I like to get the news and the sports, and I do watch that, and quite religiously at the news time, especially. I get Terre Haute, usually Channel 10, see what's going on.
I can remember your dad, and it was right after, really at the end of World War II, when a lot of people could not buy cars, but the fact that he
was a
delivered
mail
mail,
carrier.
he always
Always
had
a new car every
nice
year.
new car.
Every year.
I thought that was just
Oh, yes,
marvelous.
Yes,
So this whole thing of transportation,
yeah.
what's your take on that and all the stuff with flying anymore?
I don't know if you looked at my old car out here. I said, you know, I would never have driven a car this old. For all my life, this is the oldest car I have ever driven. There is not one thing wrong with it. It rolled over 100,000 miles here the other day, and I thought, why do I think I need to go get a new car just because the speedometer says I've gone that far? So I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I'm probably going to keep it. And the first time it stops, believe me, I'll call Donald, you come get me and take me to get a car. But there's nothing wrong with it. But I have taken care of it. Kids haven't romped it around and hot rodded it, and it's been serviced regularly, and it's been taken care of, and it doesn't have cigarette holes in the seats, and it doesn't have alcohol spilled in it. But, you know, I don't know. I may drive it to my grave. Who knows?
But over all these years, you've seen a lot of changes
Oh,
in
yes.
transportation.
Oh,
And I know
yes.
you're flowing some, too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What's your reaction to some of this mess we've got with the
The
airlines
flying,
industry?
I don't know. I have always flown very comfortably. I've been in a couple storms in my lifetime, which I was praying, and the good Lord answered my prayers, but that I'd get down on the ground and could put my feet out. But I am a person, and I have believed this all my life. If you do what you think is right, when it's your time, you're going to go anyhow. So I do not steer away from anything that is sensible. If I've even put my foot a little heavy on the gas now and then. I've been lucky I haven't gotten in trouble over that, but nobody happened to catch me.
Does your family know about that?
Me driving fast? Oh yeah, I was probably in the back seat a few times. But I was a good driver. I was trained well and I was very careful. But I exceeded this. That's probably my biggest law-abiding thing that I'd be in trouble with. But I never got in trouble because I did it out on an open road where nobody was around but me, you know. But I did like to get there. Well, I was always in a hurry. I had a lot to do. But I did drive probably faster than I should. But that was my biggest mortal sin, to speed limits.
Now the whole world's going to know that, Rose.
Well, I'm sure they will, and I don't care. I'm still here, and I don't do it anymore. So they can't get me now because I don't do it.
This has been so much fun and so entertaining. And Rose, we'll kind of wrap up here. If you were to talk to someone in another country, let's say on the other side of in Europe or something, and you were trying to tell them about Marshall, what would you say of why this is such a great place to live, and maybe try to convince them why they ought to live here?
I have done that a few times, and they think it would be lovely, and a few of them have said, we will come and see you sometime, but they haven't knocked on my door. But I used to travel extensively and go to other countries, and I'd meet nice people and see wonderful places. And I'd say, come and see us, come see me in Marshall, and in the country I was out then. I said, come see me, and I will show you what America is, rural, mid-America country. And they'd always say they would, but they'd always call or ride or something, and they couldn't get over here, and they didn't come visit. I don't know if we ever had, did I ever have any foreigner come when he was growing up? Who did I used to have that come from?
Annalisa Davis.
Well, she was German, but she married Phil here, and they became friends. And she was our best.
She came to visit even after they left.
Yes, she did. Yeah, after he died too.
She was a German World War II.
Bride, yeah.
Yeah, what they call it.
And she became a good friend of mine. That he was with Bessico, and he and Peaches became good friends. And Annalisa, she was so tickled I would be her friend. She said, you know, I'm a foreigner, and so many of those Marshall women don't like me. And I said, no, you're misinterpreting. They don't understand you. And I said, I'm going to learn to. So she became a good friend of mine, and just wonderful person. And, yeah, I had some lucky, good friends and good times. But she was probably the one that was the closest to us, because she spent a lot of time with me. Because a lot of people, well, and she had her accent from Germany. A lot of people didn't want to talk to her because they had to listen.
Well, of course, during especially World War II, there was very much of an anti.
Oh,
German
yeah, especially
influence.
Germany, yeah,
Oh,
that was true.
Even things
And,
made in Germany were kind of shunned.
you know, she would go someplace like the Legion or the V or something, and people would say bad things she'd hear about, well, you know, she is a damn German, you know. And I liked her. She was a wonderful person. And she taught me to knit. That's when I knit everybody booties for Christmas, house slippers for Christmas, and I made Peaches a sweater vest, and I made him wear it to Lions Club every time he went for all that winter. But she came and she had the patience to teach me how to knit. Well, I was always busy. I sat down, and I'll bet up in the attic out at the farm there's still all of my knitting stuff. But I had this stuff that she told me I had to have, and she had the patience to teach me, and I knitted some pretty nice stuff. You kids even had to wear it to school. And just good days I had.
Well, thank you so much, Rose. It's been fun talking to you. I learned some things that I didn't know. And what you have said here is going to be in writing. It's going to be available for a lot of other people. I'll bet they'll find some entertaining reading out of that, too.
Some of the people that's involved in, is that thing shut off?
No. But thank you so much.
Well,
It's
you
been
are
real
most
fun,
welcome.
and the Friends of the Library appreciate your time and your participation in this project.
I want you to know we appreciate the Friends of the Library and all they do for our community too.
Good.
That a lot of people use that and enjoy it. So I think it's wonderful that we're blessed with that. So,
Well, thanks again so much.
well, thank you. Turn that thing on. See, I started to write down what I was going to say to him.
Well, we kind of rehearsed it yesterday.
Do you
and-
think I said more than that?
No, you passed me down the fair tickets. If nobody else is
Fair.
going tonight, we may take
Tickets.
2 or 3 of those.
You can have whatever you want. The only thing, if you don't want part, leave me 1 or 2 out of each one. You can have the